since I showed you guys my chemistry textbook, overall, my ability to express myself in Chinese, that has changed very much since then. My 线性代数, which is like linear algebra textbook, because my courses were very math heavy. So if you're considering to come study at Peking University, hi everyone, I know it's been a while since I made a video, so I wanted to take this time to kind of make a remake of a video that I made last year around this time, talking about my first week at Peking University and the experiences that I've had so far as a now sophomore, which is actually crazy to think about it because it feels like just yesterday that I was walking onto the Peking University campus as a freshman. And now that I've been in China studying abroad for about 1 year, I wanted to give you guys a brief rundown of how I've been doing, updates on my life, as well as the overall experience as an international student while studying abroad in China, because I know it's not something that's very common, especially when it comes to students that are coming from, for instance, coming from the US to studying in China. First of all, I just want to say that I'm happy to announce that I passed advanced mathematics, which was definitely one of the courses that I was the most stressed out about at Peking University. And so first, I guess I'm going to give you guys some updates on what has happened in the past year since I've been at Peking University. Then I'm going to discuss briefly about what kind of courses I'm taking right now at the moment, as well as the future plans, and talk about briefly my overall thoughts on my first year and coming in second year, as well as how I plan for the future in terms of gaining as much experience as possible, overcoming the cultural barrier as well as language barrier. I have a few things to say about that, and we'll get to that in just a second. But first, I want to say that I passed advanced mathematics, which I made videos on before in the past. Like, I think I made one dedicated video where I was literally just talking about how I was going to have a math exam in the next couple of hours and how stressed out I was. And I just want to say also, I forgot to mention, but this is going to be a more unfiltered video because I like, being able to talk to you guys in a more like close manner. And then I know that in the past I had previously, the video that I did about first week at Peking University last time was where I was actually studying chemistry, and that was because I had previously been on the pre-med path, but that has changed very much since then, and I am now currently pursuing finance and economics and things like that, and that has been quite an experience as well. But I'm glad that I got over that chemistry phase and I'm now doing something that I would say that overall I definitely do enjoy more, and so that's been a great experience. But I feel like the second semester was definitely a bit more stressful in terms of academics because of the courses I was taking. I was taking two very no, not even two. I think four of my courses were very math heavy. One was like a pure math course, and the others were like either coding or economics finance courses, which are obviously going to have a lot more math involved because finance itself is often very quant heavy, especially when those classes aren't necessarily solely theory based. But of course, that depends on the professor, I think. And I think for my professors, especially Peking University professors, they do really like to use math. So if you're considering to come study at Peking University and are maybe considering some sort of finance or math related degree, I think it's just important to keep in mind that math here is definitely no joke. And, while it may not be like Olympiad math necessarily, there are quite a few Olympiad mathematicians at our school. So that is just quite an experience. But I digress. In any case, that was how my previous semester had gone, and it was very relieving that I actually did pretty well in all of my classes, and I feel like progressively I got slightly better at, learning in Chinese, and I didn't have to use Google Translate nearly as much as I did when I was first starting out, and so that was really great. And I also noticed that overall, my ability to express myself in Chinese definitely improved quite a bit by the end of the second semester of my freshman year. Although I will say there are certain instances, especially when it comes to more professional topics, where I find it quite difficult to truly express what I want to convey to the other person when I'm using Chinese. But I think that regardless of what language you're using, there's always going to be some issues there, especially if it's not your mother tongue. But I do feel like it improved significantly after studying abroad, and I do think that the environment definitely really helps with that. Although, unfortunately, I would say that my reading and writing comprehension still aren't quite at the level that I want them to be at, because although my classes were all in Chinese, for some of my exams, I was able to answer in English if I felt like it was extremely difficult to express what I wanted to or convey what I wanted to the professor when answering the question. But because my courses were very math heavy, there wasn't a lot of instances where I actually needed to do that in the first place because when you're doing solving math, it's a pretty universal language and there's not really a lot of difference whether you're answering in English or Chinese because it's just numbers. But in any case, I think that was a pretty good experience overall. And although I feel like overall there's definitely still parts where my Chinese could be improved, I think that having studied in China for so long has been really helpful. But I would say that during the summer break, I was actually not in China. I went back to the US to spend time with my family and get to go back home. So during that time period, I was pretty much only speaking English, other than occasionally with my parents. But even then, sometimes we would default to English, yeah, instead of Chinese because when you're in that environment, it just becomes more natural. Although I did try to keep in contact with some of my friends here in China, and so that was helpful in terms of practicing speaking. But now that I've been back for about like 2-ish weeks, it's definitely improved once again, and I'm just going to continue working on it and trying to improve and expand my vocabulary as we progress. And so transitioning into this actual semester, I'm of course still taking math because as a finance major, there's a lot of quantitative finance, or just they have a pretty high standard or requirement for math for finance majors at Peking University, which I'm not sure if that's the case for all universities, but that is how it is over here. And so I just wanted, since I showed you guys my chemistry textbook before in the past in my previous video, this time around I wanted to show you guys my 线性代数, which is like linear algebra textbook, and it's very blue, I would say. It kind of matches my jacket here, but because my advanced mathematics book was red, and so sometimes I like to think, oh, that just kind of like reflected my overall attitude towards the course, very angry, very frustrated, very I don't know, something like that. And now blue, you would think it's like very calm and relaxing, but I feel like for me, because I had a pretty strong foundation in calculus, advanced mathematics for some parts of it, it was actually easier, I would say, than linear algebra because when you already have a pretty solid foundation in the material that you're learning, when you learn more difficult and more abstract concepts, it definitely helps in the overall comprehension. Versus for linear algebra, I had maybe gotten very few experience in that aspect. And so because of that, I wasn't really able to grasp what the professor was saying, especially in the first few lectures. It was actually a bit of a nightmare, but I will say that now I'm doing a lot better now. Like I think at first I just was very confused, like at the very over the very fundamental like row operations just because I hadn't touched matrices in such a long time. But now I think it's gotten a lot better, and I can show you guys some of the stuff that we're doing, but there's a lot more proofs than I thought there would be in this textbook. But I do think that I think for linear algebra, it's just about the practice. The more you practice, the more familiar you'll get with it. And I think that now I have a slightly better grasp of definitely how to do row operations. I think I've gotten a pretty solid hold on that. But now it's some more abstract things dealing with determinants and different ways to solve it through like expansions and such, which I'm finding to be pretty interesting. And right now we're like learning about Cramer's rule and lots of different rules that go with that in terms of determining the value of a matrix and the different strategies that you can use to determine the value of the matrix in a fast and efficient manner, as well as kind of proving certain concepts and certain properties of a matrix, which I find to be the hardest part because I think I can grasp the property, but when you actually want me to prove it or use that property to prove something else, that's where it gets even more complicated. But I think that slowly but surely I will hopefully be able to get a better grasp of the overall content, and so that's been interesting. Another thing that I will say is that I do have like classes that have to do with finance as well, like money and banking and such. And that's actually been super interesting because I've noticed that now, slowly as I progress in terms of my learning and go into courses that are more finance based towards my major, I think that there's a lot of real world things that I can kind of see in the courses that I'm learning. For instance, in investments, there's a lot of investment concepts that we're learning in class that can actually be applied to when you're managing your own portfolio or determining how to allocate your money and such, as well as the situation with the banks and such. For instance, with the Federal Reserve, I've noticed that some of the things that we're learning in class may be applicable to certain behaviors of the overall economy and the way that the Federal Reserve or the market is behaving and reacting to certain things that are happening in the world. But that is not the main subject of this video, and I won't expand too much on that. But yeah, I just feel like overall it's definitely been quite an experience, and I think that my Chinese has been improving a lot, and I will definitely update you guys in terms of how my courses are going in the future. And if you guys have anything in particular that you want to watch regarding my experience at Peking University, please feel free to let me know too. I'm always open to ideas. I know I've yet to do a cafeteria tour and such, but I'm hoping to do that soon so that, because that's been on my bucket list for quite a while. But I think that it's been really interesting to kind of explore new things, new cultures, new people, and getting to see people go from all walks of life, on all in this one campus. And you might meet someone from across the world that you would have never gotten the chance to meet if you didn't study abroad. But I think one final note that I want to touch on, I suppose, is just in terms of what I want to do in the future, in terms of whether I want to stay in China or in the US. And I think now that I've been in China for 1 year, I think I have maybe a bit more to say on this subject. And for me personally, I feel like I'm honestly still not sure, although that's not a very direct answer. I do feel like there are definitely pros and cons to staying in either side. And honestly, I guess I will just have to determine what I want for my lifestyle as well as what opportunities are open. But I think that I'm keeping an open mind, and I definitely wouldn't say that I'm super against either or. I think that whatever opportunities come my way, I'm willing to embrace them and explore. And I'm not kind of in like a fixed mindset where I have to stay in China or I have to go back to the US. That is a TBD. But I hope you guys, if you guys are interested, you can follow along with my journey and subscribe to the channel. And I will make new videos in the future. I will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.